I never thought I'd end up telling this story. Most of the guys who were down there with me, well, let's just say they're not around anymore to contradict it. It started like any other job. I'm a contract digger, been doing it 15 years. Trenches, tunnels, rescue bores, you name it. We go where the money is, and in early 2022, the money was flowing fast out of a black-budget contractor called Parallax Deepworks. Never heard of them before, and believe me, I checked. No website, no LinkedIn footprint, nothing on Glassdoor. But the rep who called me knew my name, knew jobs I'd worked in Utah and West Virginia, even mentioned my divorce. Creepy, sure, but when he said, $10,000 a day, paid in full before the drill even touches dirt, I stopped asking questions. I was flown out to a site in southern Colorado, middle of nowhere, about 80 miles south of Alamosa, near the New Mexico border. Nothing around but scorched grass, old cattle fences, and rusted-out silos that hadn't held grain in decades. We weren't told what we were digging for, only how deep, 3,000 feet minimum. That's not normal. That's deeper than most mines, deeper than most safe drilling permits allow. But the setup was immaculate, brand new drill rigs, top-of-the-line boring machines, seismic feedback tech I'd only seen in defense contracts. The team was 9 of us. None of us knew each other beforehand. And none of us had cell service for miles. They gave us satellite radios, food rations, and these bizarre security lanyards we had to wear at all times. Not to check ID, but to track stress levels and vitals. I thought that was odd. They told us it was, for our safety in the event of subterranean pressure shifts. But the oddest thing? There was no exit plan. No. You're done on this date. No. Here's your contact if something goes wrong. Just the job, the hole, and one rule that was burned into us during the 3-hour safety briefing. If you hear voices underground, do not respond. No matter what. Do not acknowledge them. We laughed it off. Standard. Don't panic. Drill talk. But the site supervisor, this ex-military guy with dead eyes and a badge that only said Fracture 2, didn't smile once. I swear he stared at me longer than the others, like he already knew I'd be the one to break the rule. That first week was textbook. We dug straight down, like they told us, using layered bore casings every 100 feet. The deeper we went, the warmer the rock got, but not unusually so. It wasn't until day 9 that we hit something strange. It wasn't rock. It wasn't soil either. It was metal, but not like steel or copper, something dull and black and fused like volcanic glass. The bore head sparked when it touched it and fused shut. We had to replace the whole cutter. One of the crew, a guy from Arkansas named Bennett, ran his hand across it and said, "This ain't man-made." We joked that maybe we'd found a UFO. The site supervisor didn't laugh. He just said, "You've breached entry layer 1. From now on, every foot you dig, you log verbally through the uplink. Every foot." Then he handed us new uniforms, pressurized suits with built-in comms. Looked like something out of a deep-sea mission. And we kept digging. Only now, the walls started to echo. Not with our voices, with others. Sometimes they mimicked what we just said, like a delay. But sometimes they said things none of us ever said. The first time I heard one, it was whispering my name. Not shouting. Not even speaking clearly. Just breathing it, like a hiss through teeth pressed against rock. "Eric." That's when I remembered the rule. Do not respond. I didn't. Bennett did. He answered, laughing nervously. "Who the hell is down there?" The radio static screamed. His lanyard started blinking red. And 3 days later, Bennett was gone. We didn't talk about what happened to Bennett. Not directly. That morning, his bunk was empty, sheets folded military style. Boots lined up perfectly at the base. His lanyard, still blinking red, sat on top of his neatly folded jacket like someone placed it there on purpose. The rest of us thought maybe he bailed in the night, or they pulled him out after he had some kind of breakdown. But there were no vehicle tracks. No chopper noise. No trace. Just gone. We reported it over the uplink. Team member unresponsive, presumed MIA. The response was instantaneous. Continue excavation. Do not break pattern. Protocol remains in effect. No search, no questions. Just keep digging. They called it the descent protocol, and it was drilled into us harder than the safety briefings. From the moment we hit that black metal layer, everything changed. We were to descend in 2-man rotations, 6-hour shifts. No solo digging. One person runs the drill, one logs readings and provides auditory confirmation every 10 feet. And every single word spoken near the bore had to be logged and sent up. Because verbal anomalies were now considered a primary hazard, the drills began pulling up material none of us could identify. Chalky, glass-like sediment with microfractures that vibrated when you held it. It'd hum in your palm like a live wire, then stop the second you put it down. We weren't allowed to keep samples. Security would incinerate anything we tried to bring back up. On day 13, we reached 1,700 feet. And that's when we started finding hollows. Not caves. Not air pockets. These were perfectly shaped voids, cylindrical, smooth, with uniform depth. Some vertical, some horizontal. Some had markings around the rim like burned carvings, almost like old Cherokee syllabary, but twisted, mirrored, wrong. And sometimes we'd hear movement in those voids. Like something was climbing. Not fast. Just a slow, deliberate scraping, like someone dragging fingernails across tile. The site supervisor, the same guy with the Fracture 2 badge, didn't react. He never reacted to anything. Just recorded our reports and handed us new orders. But we knew. We knew there was something under us. On day 14, during my shift with Carter, a no-bullshit union guy from Philly, we hit one of those voids, and the drill started pulling air, not stale air. Cold air. Like someone was running an AC unit down there. Then came the voice again. Only this time, it wasn't just whispering. It was chanting. Low, rhythmic. Repeating syllables in a language I couldn't place. Carter stared at me, jaw tight, and said, "That's not a fucking echo." I grabbed the uplink mic and whispered, "Auditory anomaly at 1720. Non-English pattern. Requesting clarification." Silence. Then the radio crackled back. Audio confirmed. Do not mimic. Do not transcribe. Continue excavation. We didn't speak the rest of the shift. Later that night, I saw Carter by the fire pit outside the HAB units. He had his boots off, just staring into the dirt, chain-smoking menthols. He didn't look at me when he spoke. Just said, "Back in Iraq, we found a village that wasn't on the maps. No roads and no power lines. Just one old man living in a building made of mud and bones. Said he was the last of the buried state." I asked what that meant. Carter shook his head. Didn't know then. Think I'm starting to. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing footsteps in the gravel outside. But when I'd opened the door, nothing was there. Just the wind. Then, just before sunrise, I woke to something sliding under my door. It was a piece of paper. Looked torn from a manual. On it, printed in faded black ink, were 5 words. Do not reach level 4. I didn't show anyone the paper. Not Carter. Not the night techs. Not even the shift lead. Something about it felt dangerous. Like whoever slipped it under my door was already in trouble for knowing what it meant. And deep down, I think I was afraid they might come back for it. We crossed 1,900 feet that day. The drill speed slowed down dramatically, not from any mechanical fault, but because the rock composition changed again. It had the density of granite but layered like ancient concrete, slab after slab after slab. Like a man-made foundation, only impossibly old and deep. We started calling them subfloors. Each one had a faint metallic trace in it, almost magnetic. Every time we breached another, the ground vibrated faintly for hours. Like we were setting off a chain reaction below. And that's when the voices changed. They weren't whispering anymore. They were laughing. Not loud. Not human. This weird, breathless rhythm, like someone trying to imitate laughter without lungs. It echoed through the tunnels during the night shifts, bouncing off bore walls, growing louder the deeper we went. One of the new guys, Samir, a quiet geology grad who never complained, snapped on day 16. He walked off during a shift, said he heard someone calling his name in a woman's voice. Said it sounded like his mother, who died 3 years ago. The supervisors found him 5 hours later, 60 feet down a side shaft, curled in a fetal position, eyes wide open. He wasn't injured. Just unresponsive. They airlifted him out that night in a chopper with no lights. The rest of us didn't ask questions. We just worked. The pressure was getting worse. Both from above and below. I'd never felt it like this. Our heads ached constantly. Blood noses, blurry vision. Half the crew started hearing things outside the bore now. In the shower. While cooking. While sleeping. And the worst part? The ground started talking back. No, I'm not being metaphorical. The drill's vibration sensors began picking up rhythmic pulses before we broke through the next layer. Like something was tapping from underneath, mimicking our drill patterns. Responding to them. We thought it was a mechanical fault. We ran diagnostics. Everything came back clean. And then Carter said something I'll never forget. He pointed at the seismic monitor and said, "It's not responding to the drill. It's responding to the voices." The uplink picked up on it. Within an hour, we were called in for an unscheduled briefing. Fracture 2 was there, standing next to a woman in a clean white lab coat. She looked completely out of place, well-rested, calm, like she just stepped out of an office building. She introduced herself as Dr. Mara Greaves, Cognitive Systems Division. No mention of what agency she worked for. She didn't smile. She simply said, "You've entered a sonic interface zone. You are not to speak underground unless prompted. From this point forward, the dig is classified. If you choose to leave, do so now. You will not be cleared for return." Nobody moved. She handed us noise cancellation comms. Brand new. Said they were filtered to block subauditory pattern intrusion. I asked her what that meant. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "The voices are trying to understand your language." I didn't ask anything else. We reached level 3 the next day. A depth none of us had ever come close to. The subfloor there wasn't rock, it was bone. Compressed calcium structures braided like rebar, fused and fossilized together. Not human. Not animal. Something architectural. It ran in a perfect ring around the bore shaft, like a load-bearing structure. Someone had built it. We were in something. Something massive. Something buried on purpose. That night, Carter showed up at my door. He looked pale, eyes bloodshot. He said he had a dream, or maybe it wasn't a dream. Said he saw a room underground, far deeper than we'd gone. Said it had doors in every direction, each one carved with symbols that looked alive. And behind one door, something was knocking. I tried to tell him it was just the stress, the altitude, the pressure. But he looked me in the eye and said, "You remember that paper you found? The one that said don't reach level 4? I saw it again. In my dream. But this time, it was being burned." By day 19, none of us were pretending this was a job anymore. We weren't even pretending we were in control. We were descending into something far older than anything we'd studied, anything we'd mapped. Something not meant to be found. Something that noticed when it was. That morning, we pulled up a sample from 2,340 feet. At first glance, it looked like black shale, but when the lab techs tried to wash it, the outer layer sloughed off like dead skin. Beneath it was a tooth. An actual tooth. Only it wasn't fossilized. No mineralization. Still had traces of living tissue embedded at the root. 4 inches long. Serrated edges like a shark, but curved inward like it was meant for gripping, not cutting. Carter and I stared at it in the decontamination tent, both of us too scared to touch it. The site supervisor came in, took one look, and left without a word. An hour later, 2 hazmat guys arrived and took it away. We never saw it again. That night, I went looking for answers. I couldn't sleep anyway. I figured if we were going to die down here, I might as well know why. So I broke into the uplink shack. There was a laptop, military encrypted, but someone had left a login session open. There wasn't much. No maps, no blueprints, no emails. But there were audio logs. Hundreds of them. They were all titled with weird names. Anchor 13. Mouth Echo Delta. State 7 low. One caught my eye. Subject Echo, initial vocal contact. I clicked it. The first 10 seconds were static. Then, a voice, calm, male, American accent, began reciting a standard test phrase. Testing interface. This is Operator Lambert initiating contact with subterranean layer anomaly. Do you read? 5 seconds of silence. Then, it answered. Not in English. Not at first. It was low, gravelly, like rocks grinding against each other under pressure. But it repeated the word. Read. Over and over. Read. 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 Then it said, You are not the first. I shut the laptop. Put everything back. I didn't sleep. Carter was waiting for me the next morning. He'd been listening to the walls all night. Said they were quieter. Not silent, quieter. They're not testing anymore, he told me. They're learning. That day, during the evening rotation, the drill brought something up we hadn't seen before, a box. No one believed it at first. We thought maybe the casing jammed and brought up a tool. But it wasn't metal. Not quite. It was this smooth, grayish stone, cubed, symmetrical, with a seam that looked almost like a hinge. It was cold. Too cold. Like something inside it was absorbing heat. Fracture 2 showed up in full gear, took it from the tech's hands, and walked off without speaking. No one logged it. No one mentioned it again. But something changed after that. That night the air turned sour. Heavy. Like breathing through wool soaked in vinegar. The lights dimmed slightly in the HAB units, and no one could explain why. Then the dreams started. We all had them. We didn't talk about them at first, but we all had the same one. You're standing in an endless corridor. The walls are pulsing, alive, like they're breathing in slow sync with your heartbeat. You hear water dripping. Then you see the doors, hundreds of them, stretching into blackness. Some are open. Some are locked. And some are knocking back. The dream always ends the same way, with your name whispered by something just out of sight. Close enough to feel, but never to see. That night, 4 of the team quit. Packed their gear. Said they'd walk across the desert if they had to. Didn't even ask for transport. They made it about a mile before the lights in the sky showed up. No sound. Just long beams of pale green light that swept the scrubland like searchlights from nowhere. I watched through my bunk window as the 4 of them froze, just froze in place. Then they turned around. And walked back to camp. Their faces were blank. They didn't speak again. Not once. They just stood by the drill site, staring into the dark shaft. Like they were waiting. Day 21. We weren't a crew anymore. We were a collection of bodies with jobs, keeping a routine only because stopping might mean thinking, and thinking meant panic. The guys who walked out and came back? They didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Just stood near the bore in those same clothes, caked in desert dust, faces sunburnt and blank. Fracture 2 never acknowledged them, not once. Like they were no longer part of the operation, but still, required. And the worst part? They smiled when we hit level 4. We weren't supposed to reach it. Remember? The note. The dreams. Even the soil seemed to know. The drill fought every inch of the way past 2,600 feet, overheating, shaking, sensors going haywire. But on the night of day 23, the drill slipped. That's what it felt like. Like we hit nothing. No resistance. No sediment. Just air. Everyone froze. The uplink lit up automatically. New chamber detected. Level 4 breach confirmed. We gathered at the shaft, flashlights cutting through steam rising from below. And I'll never forget what it smelled like. Mold, ozone, and something coppery, something alive. The drill tech lowered a camera probe, live streamed to the uplink. The feed was grainy, low-res infrared, but we saw enough. It was a room. Perfectly geometric. Walls made of that same black, fused metal we hid days before, but shaped. Deliberate. Decorated with relief carvings that didn't match anything on this planet. In the middle of the chamber was a table. And on the table was a body. Humanoid. Lying flat. Perfectly preserved, but not mummified. Its skin was translucent, stretched thin over long bones, like wax left in the sun. No eyes. No mouth. Just folds of skin where a face should be. But the worst part. It was breathing. The chest rose and fell once every 10 seconds. Shallow. Measured. Like it was waiting. The feed cut out. No explanation. Just a hard stop and a static screen. Fracture 2 didn't say a word. He made a call on his private sat line, then turned to the rest of us and said, "All shifts are suspended. You will remain in quarters. Level 4 is sealed." But we felt it. Even back in the hab units, we felt the pressure shift. The air grew heavier, electric. Like a thunderstorm waiting to break underground. Everyone heard it, though no one admitted it out loud. The humming. Low, rhythmic. Like machinery idling just beneath our feet. Or like chanting, filtered through a dozen walls of earth. Carter came to my bunk that night. He didn't knock. He just walked in, shut the door, and said, "We didn't find level 4. It found us." He held up a printout, one he stole from the command trailer. A floor plan. Faded, black and white. 6 concentric rings labeled with numbers. The outermost one was labeled Layer 0, Access. Layer 1, Echo Gate. Layer 2, Bone Channel. Layer 3, Pre-contact Housing. And finally, Layer 4, Host State. There was a 6th layer at the center, with no name. Just a number. 0. I asked what it meant. He just stared at it and said, "I think that's where the doors are." That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of the dreams, but because I could hear someone walking outside. Pacing. Slow, deliberate steps, circling my unit over and over. But when I looked out the window, there was no one there. Just the dust. And a single footprint that didn't match our boots. It had too many toes. Day 24. The official line was that level 4 had been sealed. That's what Fracture 2 told us. That's what the uplink logs repeated every 2 hours like some kind of digital rosary. All activity below 2,600 feet is halted. Do not descend. But the drill was still running. I could hear it. Deep, mechanical pulses like a heartbeat. Slow, steady. Like it was still moving, just beneath the floor of the camp. And worse, those 4 crew members who returned, after walking out into the desert? They were gone now. Not gone like missing. I mean, no trace. Bunks cleared out, lockers empty, even their footprints around the bore had vanished. Like someone had gone through with a broom and erased them from reality. Carter and I didn't even talk about it. We both just knew they'd been let back into level 4. Or maybe they'd never come back at all. That night, the dreams changed. No more endless corridors. No more closed doors. Now we were in the chamber. Standing around that table. Looking down at the thing that shouldn't be alive. Only now, in the dream, it wasn't lying still. It was watching us. No eyes. No mouth. But we could feel it. That stare. That hunger. In the dream, it whispered in a voice made of dry leaves and cracking stone. "The upper states are hollow. We will rise through the shell." I woke up with blood in my mouth. I'd bitten down on my tongue in my sleep, hard. Half the crew reported migraines. Carter threw up 3 times before breakfast and didn't eat for the rest of the day. Then we got the new orders. Volunteers were being requested for a secondary descent team. No names. No explanations. Just a clipboard left in the common tent with a blank sign-up sheet and one word at the top. Hosting. We were told it was optional. But by sunset, 3 names were already on the list. One of them was Dr. Greaves. The other 2 were guys I'd never seen before. Didn't even recognize their uniforms. Their badges didn't say fracture, just a single word printed in red block letters. Aberrants. I don't know who they were. I don't know what that badge meant. But that night, Carter came to me with a map. Hand-drawn. Shaky lines, marked in pencil, smeared from sweat. It showed the shaft, the sublayers, and something else. A side tunnel. One that wasn't in the schematics. One that went around level 4. Someone dug this before us, Carter said. Or maybe after. Doesn't matter. It bypasses the gate. If we follow it, we can see what's beyond the host state. Maybe even get proof. Proof for what? I asked. He didn't answer. Just looked at the paper and said, I think this whole place is a lung, man. And something inside it's getting ready to breathe. We decided to make the descent ourselves. No clearance. No escort. No comms. Just flashlights, rope, and the old auxiliary tunnel we'd pretended not to notice for 3 weeks. The one behind the Deccan chamber, buried beneath old equipment crates and cables that were too neatly stacked to be an accident. We waited until 200 hours. Slipped out through the back under a new moon. The air was thick. Too still. The kind of still that makes your ears ring just to fill the silence. The tunnel was steep. Angled wrong. Not like it was meant to be used by people. We followed it down for 40, maybe 50 minutes, lights flickering against walls that seemed to pulse every few minutes, like they were absorbing the light and giving it back a beat late. And then we saw it. Another chamber. No lights. No scaffolding. Just carved stone covered in soot, symbols scrawled in long, arcing lines across the walls. This one wasn't symmetrical. It spiraled. At the center was a shaft of some kind, rising into the rock like a black tree trunk. And hanging from the walls were objects. Some metal. Some bone. Some looked like tools. Others, like masks. Not tribal. Not ceremonial. Functional. Designed to cover a face that wasn't shaped like ours. Carter whispered, These aren't artifacts. They're gear. Then the humming started again. But it wasn't coming from the walls this time. It was coming from inside our chests. We stood there for what felt like hours. Neither of us said a word. Neither of us moved. The humming wasn't sound, it was something deeper. It vibrated inside us. Like a tuning fork placed behind your heart. Not painful, but wrong. You know that instinct, that animal sense that something nearby wants to open you up just to see what's inside? That's what this place felt like. The air was vibrating. Not with heat. Not with pressure. With intent. Carter finally moved. He raised his flashlight toward the ceiling and said, There's writing. And there was. Faint carvings across the inside of the spiral dome. Almost invisible unless you knew where to look. We moved closer, and the carvings became clearer, not because the light got better, but because the walls seemed to respond to our presence. The grooves shimmered faintly, like heat lines off pavement. There were symbols, yes. But they weren't language in the way we understand it. They moved. Shifted. As if they were trying to mimic our thoughts, like a predator imitating a baby's cry to draw us in. Then they locked into place. And Carter whispered the words that appeared. We were here before the shell was made. I asked him what that meant. He didn't answer. He just stepped back from the wall like it had burned him. Suddenly, the light changed. A pale, greenish glow began pulsing from the shaft in the center of the room. And then, we heard breathing. Slow. Wet. Drawn-out inhalations like something enormous was waking up just beyond the rock. We backed away fast. But before we could move more than a few feet, Carter froze. Not with fear, literally froze. Like something had seized him mid-step. His eyes went wide. His lips parted like he was trying to scream, but all that came out was a low clicking noise, like a cicada in slow motion. And his flashlight dropped. I caught him before he hit the floor. He was ice cold, pupils blown wide, teeth chattering. And his hand was clenched around something. A metal token. It looked like brass, but when I touched it, it pulsed. Just once. Like a heartbeat. I pocketed it without thinking and dragged Carter out the way we came. We didn't speak. He couldn't. But as I pulled him through the tunnel, he kept looking over his shoulder, over and over again. When we reached the deck and tent, the site was dark. No floodlights. No humming from the generator. No voices on the comms. Just wind. Something was wrong. The air smelled like rust and ozone again, only stronger. Carter was getting worse. His skin had gone clammy, and he kept muttering under his breath. Nonsense at first. But then, through the static of his rambling, I caught a phrase. It's not breathing air. It's breathing us. I took him to the medical trailer, but it was empty. No medtechs. No guards. Just a half-drunk mug of coffee still steaming on the desk. I checked the monitors. All black. And then the alarm went off. Not the drill alarm. The seal breach alarm. I ran outside. The bore was open. Floodlights aimed directly into it, even though the shaft was supposed to be shut down and welded. And standing around the edge were the 3 volunteers, Dr. Greaves and the 2 men with the aberrance patches. Except, they weren't wearing respirators. No suits. No gear. Just bare skin and calm faces, looking straight down into the dark. And all 3 of them were bleeding from the ears. Dr. Greaves looked up, met my eyes, and smiled like she recognized me. Then she stepped forward and said clear as day, "It's never been asleep. It only needed a voice." The 2 men beside her began to speak, not in English, not even in anything close. Their voices blended into this awful droning, like a broken radio tuned between numbers. The ground shuddered. And something began to rise from the shaft. I didn't see it. Not fully. Just movement. Just shapes that didn't match any logic I knew, long, segmented limbs that shimmered like oil, twisting in ways that defied bone. I ran. I don't know how far. I just remember the lights behind me fading. The sound of that humming overtaking everything, replacing the wind, the silence, even my own thoughts. And behind it all, Carter, whispering again. Still clutching that token. Still saying the same thing, over and over. They were never asleep. They were just listening. I don't know how long I ran. Could have been an hour. Could have been minutes. The terrain outside the camp had changed, subtly, but enough to know something was off. The hills looked smoother, like they'd been melted and recast. The sand had this sheen to it, like ash that didn't scatter. I didn't stop until my lungs felt like they were tearing themselves apart. When I finally collapsed behind a ridge, I looked back toward the site. It was gone. No lights. No sound. No silhouette of cranes or scaffolding. Just flat land under a churning sky. Clouds moved like oil slicks, and the moon looked wrong, too close, like a fisheye lens had been jammed over the night. I don't remember passing out, but when I came to, Carter was there. He'd followed me. His skin was gray. His eyes were bloodshot and wet, like he'd been crying for hours without blinking. But the worst part? He was smiling. Not like he was happy. Like he was relieved. He knelt down beside me, reached into his jacket, and pulled out the token again. Still warm. Still pulsing. I told him to throw it away. He shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "It hasn't chosen." I asked him what the hell that meant. He looked out over the dark horizon and said, "The shell was made to keep them in. But we were always the cracks." Then he showed me what was inside his coat pocket. It was a photo. Faded, water-damaged. Looked like a satellite image, printed decades ago. Aerial shot of the southwest. A grid of blackened holes, evenly spaced across the desert like a honeycomb burned into the earth. Each hole was marked with the same label, State Zero conduit. I asked where he got it. He said it was part of the old archives. Aberrant digs, he called them. Hidden work from the 70s. Sites just like ours, all sealed, all forgotten. But they were never sealed. He whispered. Just watched. He pointed toward the desert. I followed his gaze and saw something in the distance, a structure maybe a mile off. Low, squatting in the dirt, half buried. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat through stone. We made our way toward it. Every step felt heavier. Not like exhaustion. Like the air itself was pushing back. The structure looked like a bunker at first. Concrete face, rusted entryway half swallowed by the shifting sand. But when we reached it, we saw it wasn't made of concrete at all. It was the same black fused metal from the chamber. Smooth, seamless, warm to the touch. Carter pressed the token against it. And the door opened. No noise. No hiss. Just absence, like reality was folding back. Inside was a tunnel. Not long. Maybe 30 feet. The walls were lined with what looked like glass tubes, embedded into the metal like insect eggs. And in each one, a figure. Not human. Not alive. Not dead either. They were suspended in some kind of fluid, skin like stretched wax paper, limbs coiled like unborn children. And each of them was wearing a mask. The same kind we saw in the chamber. Not decorative. Sealed. Fitted to faces that didn't look like they should ever be breathing the air above ground. States. Carter whispered. These are the true states. Below the country. Below the continent. Sleeping in silence until we taught them how to hear. And then the tunnel shook. Not a tremor. A sound. A deep, slow tone like a war horn underwater. One long blast. Then silence. And the fluid in the tubes began to bubble. The figures inside started to move. First fingers. Then eyes beneath thin lids. Then mouths, opening impossibly wide. But they weren't screaming. They were speaking. And every word hit my head like a spike. Not through my ears, through my skull. Words that didn't belong in any throat on Earth. Words that felt like they'd been carved into the bones of the planet long before us. Carter fell to his knees. He clutched the token to his chest and whispered something I'll never forget. It's not just one of them. It's all of them. And they're coming to the surface. We ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I didn't even breathe right for the first quarter mile. Just pure panic, muscle memory, raw survival. That humming, the one we thought came from machines or walls or the air, it was in our heads now. Constant, like tinnitus you could feel in your teeth. The bunker door stayed open behind us. The lights inside never faded. They wanted us to see. To know. That they were awake now. We crested a ridge and stopped to catch our breath. The landscape had shifted again. It was subtle but unmistakable. Valleys where there were none. Distant lights in places that should have been empty scrub. And the sky, clouds moving in geometric patterns, as if they were forming glyphs only the earth could read. Carter dropped to his knees, vomiting bile and blood into the dust. His skin had gone nearly white. His eyes rolled back for a second, and then he snapped forward coughing, eyes wild. They're speaking through us now. He gasped. That's what the tokens are. Amplifiers. Repeaters. Then he looked up at me and said something that chilled me worse than the voices. The real broadcast hasn't started yet. And right then, my satellite radio buzzed. Not with static. Not with our usual encrypted comms. With a tone. A perfect, sustained pitch that hit the same frequency as the hum we'd been feeling in the chamber. Then a voice, my voice, crackled over the speaker, saying words I never spoke. The conduit has opened. The shell is weakening. Prepare the higher states for assimilation. Echo synchronization at 94%. I dropped the radio. It kept repeating. Louder. Faster. Carter stared at it and said deadpan. They'd been using the bore. Every drill. Every tunnel. Every microphone. Our infrastructure is the antenna. And now it was all on. The broadcast wasn't some abstract horror or metaphor. It was real. Physical. A signal riding through every cable, every pipeline, every substation buried beneath American soil. Every government listening post. Every fiber optic coil under every goddamn interstate. We turned our machines into their mouthpiece. Suddenly the token in Carter's pocket lit up. Not glowing. Projecting. A pattern of light spiraled across the dirt between us, fractal and hypnotic. It looked like a map at first, but as I stared at it longer, I realized it wasn't a map of the land. It was a map of the underground. The states. Dozens of them. Each one labeled with cryptic sigils and numbers. All connected. All active. All awake. And in the center, at the deepest point on the display, something labeled only as the mouth above zero. I asked Carter what that meant. He didn't answer. He just stood up, looking in the direction of the original drill site. That spot we'd fled days ago. Where Fracture 2 and Drive Greaves had stood smiling at the edge. There were lights there now. But not from vehicles. Not from towers. They pulsed from the ground, rising in smooth rhythmic waves like a signal beacon. Something was climbing out. And across the horizon, others were joining it. We counted 5 sites at first. Then 9. Then 13. All glowing. All transmitting. We didn't find one chamber. We found one mouth, on a body that spanned the continent. Buried not by accident, but by force. And now it was waking up. Not to destroy. Not to conquer. To speak. To take its place back among the living by using us as the vocabulary. Carter grabbed my arm. His voice was hoarse, broken. We have to stop the broadcast. I asked how. He looked at the token, which was now shaking in his hand like it was alive, and said, We go to the center. We go to State Zero. We made it to the access tunnel by dawn. Or what passed for dawn out there. The sky was colorless. Sunlight came through in bands like it was passing through layers of something we couldn't see, glass, fog, or maybe just atmosphere that wasn't ours anymore. State Zero wasn't a location. It wasn't even on any map Carter had. It was deeper. Lower than Layer 4, lower than anything man-made had ever drilled. According to the token, now glowing and vibrating constantly, it sat under the convergence point of the original bore and the spiral tunnel. The place where it had all begun. The tunnel narrowed as we descended. The walls weren't natural anymore. They had markings, not carved, but grown. Like veins in rock. Symbols shaped like neural networks or fingerprints, branching out and pulsing faintly in sync with the token's light. We weren't walking into a mine. We were walking into a throat. At some point, we started to hear the broadcast in our bones. No longer words. Just understanding. Emotion without language. The thoughts of something that had once been quiet for centuries, entombed, silenced, locked beneath the crust, and now, finally, unleashed. And it wasn't angry. That would have been easier. It was curious. Like a child. Like something learning how to ask. Why? Carter began murmuring again. Only now he was speaking in 2 voices. His own, and something behind it. A deeper tone, riding under his breath like a chorus trying to crawl out. His skin had started to crack around the lips. The blood came out black. I'm holding it back, he said. But it's close. It knows you. It's watching through you. Me? I didn't understand. Then we reached the final chamber. The true State Zero. It was vast. I couldn't see the ceiling. Couldn't see the end of the walls. Just the floor, slick, wet, pulsing like a diaphragm. Covered in the same spiraled structures we'd seen in the secondary chamber, but massive. Towering. Covered in carvings that moved as you looked at them. And at the center was a pit. Perfectly circular. Rimmed in fused bone and stone. And at its edge, dozens, maybe hundreds, of those masked figures standing motionless, heads tilted upward, staring into the void above. The broadcast was coming from that pit. And now, it had a voice. My voice. Echoing across the chamber, repeating lines I'd never spoken, memories I'd never made. I was born in the upper shell. I drilled. I opened. I listened. Now I will speak. Now I will be heard. The figures turned slowly in unison. All toward me. Carter staggered forward, token outstretched, and screamed. Take me instead! The chamber reacted. The humming dropped into a lower register, deeper than hearing, more like gravity twisting in place. And from the pit, something rose. Not a creature. Not a god. Not even a shape, really. An idea. A shimmer. A pattern of light and sound, so dense it warped the air, vibrating reality into something permeable. It reached for Carter. And he went silent. He dropped to his knees. And then, he split. Not like tearing flesh. More like something stepping out of a skin it no longer needed. He crumpled, lifeless, and something that looked almost like him stood in his place. Eyes black. Skin pale. And smiling. You are the last shell, it said in my voice. I backed away. The token was still pulsing in Carter's hand. Still glowing faintly. I grabbed it. It burned. It screamed through my fingers, like it was trying to reject me. And that's when I realized. It wasn't meant to be held by anyone alive. It was a kill switch. Carter must have known. I looked down into the pit, into that impossible mouth carved through stone and time, and I threw it in. The scream that followed wasn't sound. It was pressure. Every bone in my body lit up like shrapnel. The chamber twisted. The masked figures began to collapse, one by one, folding inward like papers soaked in flame. The humming stopped. The floor cracked. And everything went white. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital near Pueblo. No one could tell me who brought me in. No ID. No wallet. Just a single note in my hand, written in black grease pencil on a fragment of dig site tarp. The broadcast has stopped. For now. If you hear the voice again, don't answer. They said there was a seismic event. A non-volcanic uplift. Blamed it on fracking. Whole areas cordoned off now. Military presence. No press allowed. They never found Carter's body. But sometimes, when the power flickers at night, when the radios hiss on their own, I swear I hear it again. That hum. That question just beneath the frequency of sound. And some nights, I almost answer. But I don't. Because I know what waits beneath the crust of this country. I've seen the states below the states. And they're not sleeping anymore.